In this video, I'm going to be revealing our exact copy and paste sales script and sales process that we give out to our private clients, but shh, don't tell anyone. Now, this is the same script, not only responsible for us to be able to sign over 200 clients every single month, but also able to help our remote closing students land gigs that provide literal doctor salaries and close upwards of $200,000 every single month. Now, just so you know, I'm not holding anything back in this video, so grab a sheet of paper and a pen and let's jump right in. All right, guys, so welcome to episode number 5 of the ultimate guide to remote closing, going over our sales process and the script. As a friendly reminder, down in the description below, the second link in the description is going to bring you over to this exact document. I think you'll really need it for this one, so you can just copy and paste this, put it into your own document, or just follow this along as you're going through your own sales process and your own scripts on your sales calls. So just a couple things we're going to go over. Really, the bulk of it is going to be on the actual walkthrough of the script. But first things first, we're going to go over where we are in the entire process. So just a refresher of where we are in the sales process overall. The second thing we're going to cover is just an overview of the script. So just a high-level overview of the sales call map, and that will make sense a little bit more here once we actually go over it. And then last thing is going to be the sales script walkthrough. So walking through the entire $50 million sales script. And the reason I call it 50 million is because we were able to sell 50 million in our business last year in 2023 using this exact framework that we're going to go over. So I'm literally giving you the exact same. I'm not holding anything back. Like I said in the intro, so let's jump right in here. So again, make sure to stay to the end for full context. If you want to check out our full remote closing masterclass, there'll be a link on this document, also the first link down in the description. Feel free to check that out. It gives remote closing, condenses it a little bit more into like a 30-minute video, as opposed to having to wait and go through all these, videos here on YouTube. It just condenses it a lot more. So let's go and cover where we are in the overall sales process. So in episode number 2 and episode number 3, we went over this part right here. So going over, how we're getting these conversations, whether they're inbound apps, outbound calls for the appointment setters, right? Are they from social media, outreaching on there? So that's what we covered there. And then we talked about the qualification call. I believe that was episode number 3 as well. Down below, there should be a link to the full playlist for this video. Also, if you're in the playlist, you'll see all the videos that are a part of this. So obviously we have the qualification call. So making sure they're good, they're financially qualified, they actually want to grow. Those things are massively important before we get them on the sales call, because if you don't set them up for success on the sales call, whether it's for yourself or for your own closers, it's going to be really difficult to get them to enroll as a client if you don't ask the right questions on some of those previous calls. So now that we have an understanding of where we are in the overall sales process and that closing and enroll section, now let's go and cover a map of the closing call itself. And the reason that I call it like a script or a sales process is you want to think of it more than just words on a page, right? Or words that are on a script. There's so much more that's involved within the script itself. And if you can understand this, which I talked a lot about in the last episode, is if you can understand this and the way that everything fits together on like a psychological and high level, you'll become way better of a closer. Like this is what the top 1% of closers understand. So this is what the call is going to look like. And then I'll show you in the script where all this kind of comes together. So at first, we're going to have the introduction of the call. So this is where we build rapport with the prospect, and then we build the frame around the conversation. Now, in the information gathering, which a lot of people call this discovery, is what you're going to see here if you watch the last video, is a lot of this is going to pertain to the 7 beliefs that the prospect needs to have to buy, which we went in heavy detail, basically an hour-long training in episode number 4. So we asked the background questions, and you can see we have, pain, doubt, cost, desire, money, support, trust, the 7 beliefs. So we have pain, doubts, financial resources, right? Solution, cost, desire, and support. So a lot of the 7 beliefs that we talked about in the last episode, that is where really the majority of the discovery is going to come from. Then we have the transition. So this is where you transition, it's within the name, right? From discovery into the actual pitch. So we're going to go over the super basic transition in this one. It's literally 2 sentences, so it's not that hard to bring together. And then the pitch, we're going to cover that. So the promise, the bridge, and delivery is the 3 parts of the pitch. Very important that we have all of them. And then we're going to do the committing phase, which is the temperature check. How do you feel on a scale from 1 to 10? Talking about next steps, what that's going to look like for them, and then the investment, which is dropping the price. And then objections at the end. This we'll probably cover high level. I don't know if we're going to have a ton of time, but I do want to make an entire video around the different types of objections, how to handle objections, how to do it based on the script itself. Little bit of a spoiler. This is not how most people do objection handling. A lot of objection handling, people will do, they'll say, oh, if they say this, then you say this. That's actually the wrong way to do it. Only certain people are going to be receptive to that type of sales. I think now more than ever, because there's more people in the space, there's a lot of coaching offers, is people are a lot more skeptical to trust anyone that hits them with if they say this, you say that type of objection. So again, we're not going to cover too much in this video, but we'll have an entire other video breaking down exactly how to handle objections. So here is the meat and potatoes of today's video. So we're going to go over the problems first syntax script. So all that really means is, as we talked about in the last video, the main thing that you have to figure out on these sales calls is the pain or the problem, right? On top of the 7 beliefs, there's pain, doubt, cost, desire, money, support, trust. Everything other than pain is 100% predicated on what they tell you the problem that they have is, or the pain that they have. So this is problems first syntax. This is going to be the majority of the time, or the majority of the time we're going to use this type of script. The other type is called goals first syntax, which a lot of times you're not really going to deal with that unless you're in like B2B sales, like higher level B2B sales, where you're selling like, you know, higher level businesses and things like that, that don't really need to get out of their current situation, but they want to hit the desired situation, or I'm sorry, they don't have necessarily a pain. It's like the goal that they're trying to hit is a lot more prevalent to them than the problem, right? Like getting out of their job or things like that. So this is like really the script, and I am going to break it down. So you might have to like copy, like download this document or go to this document, copy and paste this, put it into a doc, and you might have to delete some of these things that aren't super like relevant, but I think having these notes on there could help out as well. So it just really depends on overall what you're looking to do. So as we talked about, you know, the call map, we'll say, is first off, we start with rapport. So to keep in mind, the way that I'm going to present this is I'm going to try to keep it conversational. I obviously don't have someone else that's like saying it back to me. So you almost have to like pretend this someone else is talking back. I'll kind of give what a different person would say. So, you know, I started off and was like, hey, is this John? Right. And this would be, you know, on Zoom. So maybe you wouldn't say this first part. But you would, you know, jump on a Zoom call. You would just start like conversation, right? Hey, what's going on, man? How's everything going? You know, how's your week been? And then they'll just say, oh, my week's good. I was like, yeah, same thing for me. You know, I just got down to the gym. Pretty productive week so far, right? Now, you don't want this to be like a back and forth. Like the biggest mistake that people make is they build rapport or they think rapport is like, you need to have like the same favorite baseball team. You need to like have lived in the same place, right? That's not where rapport is built. We've talked about it in previous episodes. Rapport is built when you can demonstrate that you can fix a problem for somebody else. Like that's where rapport and trust is built, right? So just a couple like back and forths, right? Some pleasantries back and forth, one or two just, you know, back and forth. And then you need to grab control of the conversation, right? The last thing you want to do is it to get really awkward and there be like awkward silence. And then they come in, they're like, so like, what's this call about, right? You don't want that to happen because you want to be able to have control of the conversation. So once that goes back and forth, you just want to jump in there and be like, hey, great. Well, so, you know, John, I know we only have a limited time here. So ready to jump in? Is that cool? You know, if you got a clean sheet of paper or something to write with, and then like that as a question, right? So they can write down notes. And then they'll say, yeah, you know, that works. And we want to, as you can tell with the tonality, like it comes with time and practice, but you don't want it to come out like, hey, great. Well, so I know we have a limited time here. So are you ready to jump in? Right. And you can hear like the inflection of my voice is there's, you know, upwards inflection, which usually demonstrates uncertainty. And that's usually how questions are answered or questions are asked, right? With the upwards inflection, like, how's your day? Right. It's like, how's your day? It goes upwards as opposed to how's your day? Right. Like that's obviously like a little bit different, but that would be like a statement versus a question. But you can hear when I say it, it's like, great. Well, so, you know, John, I know we only have a limited time here. You know, is it cool if we jump in? So you see the difference, right? Is it cool if we jump in? Is it cool if we jump in? Very subtle, but also very powerful in the way that you present yourself with certainty and confidence. So I put here, you know, if skeptical, this is now when you would be like, you would jump in a little bit more and ask a question of like, hey, like, you know, seems a little bit like, is this still a good time? Like good time to connect for you? Another time you'll see this is maybe you jump on the Zoom call and they're maybe in their car, or, you know, they're at their kid's baseball game, or, you know, whatever it is. If they're not super present, right, they're driving, they're at a restaurant for whatever reason. It's like, dude, you scheduled a call at this time. I don't know why you're at a restaurant, but you know, you never know what people are going to show up in these conversations. So if there's anything like that from their tonality that seems skeptical, then you want to call that out, right? You never want to take a conversation that they're not 100% in the conversation. And, you know, actually grabbing this, like, you know, you have a clean sheet of paper or something to take notes with. This is going to like preemptively make sure they're in a buying scenario, right? They're at a desk, they're, you know, distractions away. They might say, you know, I can't grab a paper because I'm driving, right? So that's usually a red flag. You would want to reschedule something like that. So sorry, spent a lot of time on that. So let's go into the frame. So the frame is, a little bit more here. Keep in mind, anything that's highlighted in blue is something that you would want to change within the sales script based on your specific offer and what you're helping them with. This is going to be more towards like business owners, people looking or wanting, aspiring business owners, and people wanting to get out of their 9-to-5 to start a business, or in like they're in that middle phase where they have a business and they, working a 9-to-5, and they're trying to grow the business so they can get out of the 9-to-5. That's kind of the archetype or the person that we're talking to in this conversation, in this theoretical role play. So here's what it's gonna sound like. So you're gonna say, gotcha. So what I found to work best on these calls, John, is first just diving deeper into the specifics of your business and your sales process. Now, how that's working right now, and ultimately what you feel like are the specific, challenges keeping you from moving forward. Now, once we do get some clarity there, if we can help out, then I'm more than happy to walk you through that or wherever you want to go. And if not, we can figure out whatever else is best for you. Now, this was kind of confusing in the way that I read it. What I did was I took a transcription from one of my sales calls, so it doesn't translate 100%. So just keep that in mind when you're going through this. I might refer you to someone that we know, give you some homework to work on in the meantime, whatever you need. That sound cool? So you're trying to keep it, you're trying to pull out of the conversation a little bit, make it to where it's conversational, make it to where, you're framing it as, hey, I'm just gonna ask you a couple questions. If we can help, cool. If not, totally fine, right? I think there's a completely different like subset of the market where the way that they teach sales is like very like hardcore, and they'll frame it as like, I either need a heck yes or a heck no at the end of this conversation. And I think that could work, but it only works for certain people that can present themselves that way. I'm more conversational. I found that I sell better not trying to be somebody that I'm not. And at the same time, it's also only going to work for a specific portion of the market, right? Is like, it's probably not going to work for women that well. I mean, just being honest, right? Like being hard, trying to hard close someone, like it's probably only going to work for like young dudes. You know what I mean? Cause like they're in like that motivation, rah, like, yeah, let's do it. Like that type of thing. Maybe it's not necessarily an age thing, maybe just a, personality type, but I just found this process that we're going through works for, 99% of situations, as opposed to the other way of doing it will work for like a very, like 15% of the market. So just keep that in mind. So let's go through the discovery. So discovery flow is how we're going to go through discovery. So first things first, we're going to isolate the challenge. So as we talked about in the last video, is we're breaking down what is the pain, what is the problem, right? We're isolating that, and then we're probing and getting really, really specific on what the actual problem is and the specifics of it, right? So after that, we're going to go over the desired situation. So this is going to give you the ultimate goal, as well as like the ultimate goal. I put quotes on that because it's like figuring out to them what is going to be their ultimate goal, not just like personally, but also like what does that mean to them on a much deeper level. So we also talk about monetary. So how much money do you want to make, right? Why, like, what is that number? Why is the number? And then financial qualifier of pertinence. So if it's, again, an offer that's more biz op, I guess, for lack of a better word, biz op just means business opportunity. So they might be like a full-time job, right? If they have like an already successful business, you probably don't have to go through the financial qualifier. We're going to talk about long-term vision is what we talk about, non-monetary goals. So like, hey, cool, money's great, but long-term vision outside of the money, why do you want to build this business or whatever that's that thing is that they want. And then number 3 is we're going to go through their current situation. So uncover the reason for change, go over the doubt questions, the solution questions, the cost and why now questions, and the support questions. So as you can see, pain, doubt, cost, desire, money, support, trust is a lot of the questions that, or a lot of the beliefs that we're having to break down are in their current situation. So you'll see through the questions that we ask is we're basically checking off the box on every single one of those 7 beliefs. If we get to the end of the call and we can confidently say that we understand what those 7 beliefs are and either paint the picture of where that belief needs to be or break the limiting beliefs based on those 7 beliefs, is we're going to be in a really good spot to close because we have all the ammo and everything we need in order to not only close, but handle objections if they come up, if they do at all. Because in theory, if you can get those 7 questions answered, you shouldn't have any objections. So now let's jump into the questions and the scripting breakdown. So what we're going to do here, as we talked about in that flow, is we need to isolate the challenge. So keep in mind, you're going to, if you're copying and pasting, you're looking at this, right? We're going to go from here and we're going to bring it all the way down to this, we're then leading to here. So it's like, okay, cool. So John, we agreed. That being said, probably the best place to start here is just tell me what's the biggest challenge with your sales right now, or what's not really working at the level that you think that it should, right? And then you can hear like in my voice, the way that I'm saying this is like, I'm knowingly adding like and I'm not saying you have to add like there's, people will say if you use the word or if you use filler words, then it might sound like you're uncertain. But the way that I'm doing it is like I'm intentionally doing it so that I can make it seem conversational, right? It almost makes me seem human, as opposed to saying like, that being said, probably our best place to start is to tell me what's the biggest challenge with your sales right now, right? It's like, I'm almost trying to find the words to say. I'm like acting as if I know, or I'm sorry, I'm acting as if I'm trying to find the words to say. So it's like, that being said, John, like probably the best, so you can hear like, I'm even like pausing there and like almost like gathering myself in a way. So it's like probably your best place to start, man, is, tell me what's the biggest like challenge you're facing in your sales right now, or what's not really working at the level that it truly could, or that you think that it should. And again, this part right here, you would change this out based on their specific offer you're selling. So if you're selling dating coaching, right? What's the biggest challenge with your dating life right now? What's the biggest challenge with losing weight right now? What's the biggest challenge with your marriage right now? If you're selling, marriage counseling, things like that. Or what's not working at the level that you truly think that it should. And then you could ask some background questions. I put if necessary is because a lot of times the questions as we scroll through the script is they're going to be answered. Anytime that I would, like if I'm talking to a prospect and let's say they have like a service-based business, is I'm going to ask a little bit more about like that, right? So for example, if they're like, I'm like a business coach, for example, and you want to ask like, what is their offer? What is the price point? Just a little bit more about like the business itself, as opposed to like them as a person, if that makes sense. So background questions if necessary, only if they have, more like a service-based business. So then we're going to jump into desired situation. So we'll say, okay, gotcha. So, well, what might make the most sense is to begin with the end in mind here. So this is after you've probed on the challenge. So keep in mind, you're going, what's not working level that you think that it should. So they might say, for example, I need more leads, right? Okay, cool. So you need more leads. How many leads did you get last month? Okay, exactly. We got 10 leads last month. Okay, gotcha. And out of those 10 leads, how many of those were like the perfect client that you're looking for? There are probably about 2 of them. Okay, gotcha. And out of those 2 clients, you just told me that, your price point for your program is $2,000. How many of those 2 people that were the ideal clients, or I'm sorry, how many of those 5 calls that you took are your actual, like turned into actual clients? Oh, well, 2 of them. Okay, gotcha. So what is the price point? They tell you the price point. So you're really just asking questions and you're isolating the challenge and figuring out what the actual problem is and bringing up the pain that's associated with that challenge. So just keep in mind, this is like the general scripting, but as you're having conversations with people, is you do want to dive a little bit more into their current situations. Like I said, this is where it separates the good salespeople from the great salespeople. Is decent salespeople, they have like word for word scripts. Great salespeople understand the general philosophies behind this. Again, watch the last video if you're a little bit confused at this point, because it'll help you understand like some of the psychology behind this. So desired situation. So after we've gone through the pain, right, figuring out what the challenge is, what are they struggling with, we now want to figure out their desired situation. So, gotcha. Well, what might make sense now, and maybe it wouldn't be begin with, right? It would just be dependent on where you are in the conversation. So, what might make more sense to jump into now is let's get the end in mind here. So ultimately, John, Jacob, whatever the name is, ultimately, John, what do you think the goal is here? So they're going to tell you, let's say their goal is, okay, using that same example, I want to generate more leads. And then you can go down the same questioning, right? It's like, okay, you want to generate more leads. Okay, cool. So, the goal is to, maybe they'll say like an end goal of like, okay, I want to make $20,000 a month. And I say, okay, gotcha. So $20,000 a month. Where are you right now though? Like based on that. And then you go down the entire sequence of where are they now? Okay, you're making $20,000 a month. Is that net? Is that gross? Right? Is that, and was that last month, or is that consistently month over month, or what did you make last month exactly? right? So you're asking those probing questions. Okay, tell me more. Why is $20,000 a month important to you, right? What did that allow you to do, right? And then so here's the thing too, is when you ask this, a lot of these on here up into current situation, is what's going to happen is you're going to ask this question, right? What's the goal? And they might give you everything, right? They might say, well, I'm making $20,000 a month and I want to, I want to make $20,000 a month. I want to get to a point in my business where I don't have to worry about where the leads are coming from. I want to be able to support my family, right? Things like that. But sometimes they don't say that. Sometimes they just give you like a one-word answer. Then you have to probe into and, introduce some of these probing questions. So it's going to be very dependent. Again, that's why I don't give specific scripts, is because if we just give you like a copy and paste script, is you don't know where to go if they if they get you off track, right? You want to be able to think to be able to act in the sales call. Cause it's like when you're on a sales call, right? You don't want to be looking at like your script like this and being like, oh, here, what's part of the script do I need to be at, right? That's not how you handle a sales call. Will you do that for the first handful of calls? Probably, right? Cause you got to get the reps in. So then you jump into, so if they give you everything, then obviously you can just skip on to the next part, but make sure that you do go through this and you make sure you understand like what are each of the pieces that you need to understand from the goal question. So again, you can say, and what's your monetary goal? This is assuming they don't give you the monetary goal. So, let's say they say, I want to make $20,000. And you could jump in and say, seemed like you thought of that number for it. That was pretty quick. Can I ask like why that number specifically? Like why specifically do you want to make $20,000? And they'll say, oh, because of, and then they can go through that whole list that I talked about, right? I want to make more money. I want to be able to make more money so I can spend time with my family. Or maybe they don't say that. That's when you can jump into it and you can say, have you thought about the number before? Can I ask like why that number specifically? And then they'll say, oh, well, because I've never been able to make that money before. And I would say, okay, gotcha. So like based on that money, what would that do for you? Like what would that do for you on a personal level? And you're really digging into and probing into these different parts of their psyche, if you will. So the next part here, financial qualifier. Again, this is only going to be pertinent to someone like if they're currently in a job and you just got to figure out like how much money they have. This is a much lesser evasive way of asking how much money they have, right? So you say, and how much money would you have to have just to replace the amount of income that you're making full time? So instead of saying like how much money you're making, it's like how much money do you need to replace the amount of that money that you're making, right? In order to do this full time. So then they can tell you, oh, I need this amount, and that's probably going to be, a lot of times it's not the exact money that they're making. It's usually like that goal is usually more because they take that as like, I want to have a little bit of cushion on top of that in case it doesn't go well, right? So, but at least it gives you a pretty good understanding of like, this is what I need. Then like, obviously if they say something like, well, I would need $50,000 a month to break it down. Obviously you would want to like break that down and be like, okay, gotcha. So you're making $50,000 a month right now. They're like, no, I'm only making, or they might say no. And then say, okay, well, like how much are you making right now then? And then, so it's like, you can see that you initially asked it in this way, right? Through the financial qualifier, but now it seems less invasive because you're having a conversation about it already. So then you would jump into, is that ultimately the goal? Like, do you want to transition out of your current job? Because sometimes people like their job, sometimes they don't like their job, right? So if they like their job, is like, what's the ultimate goal? Like you want to transition out of being, let's say let's say they're working corporate and they want to, build income online, right? You would say, is that ultimately the goal? Like, do you want to transition out of being in the corporate world? And they would say yes. And I would say, okay, but like, why though? Right? So you can see like, that's a really big question I like to ask, but why though? Like why specifically? Then you can probe into that. And then it was replacing enough to allow you to leave, or how much would you have to be? So again, this is kind of like, I kind of preemptively said this, but is replacing enough to allow you to leave? So that's where you're preemptively asking that question is like, is replacing enough to allow you to leave? Because if they give you like a really high number, is, for example, let's say that like, how much do you need to replace your income? And they say $5,000. And then I would say, is replacing enough to allow you to leave? They might say yes, and they might say no. I would actually, if they said no, I would say, okay, gotcha. How much would you need to leave that job? So now I'm like, and keep in mind, like I take notes via like, I don't do it online or on, Google Docs. I do it on a pen and paper. Because what you're doing is you're writing down all these things that they're saying to you. And this part is very, very important for the end of the call. And we'll talk about more about like Socratic dialogue, because we talked about it a little bit last time. But basically what it is you're asking these questions so you can bring them up at the end of the call. Because one of the biggest things that people want to do is they want to appear consistent. And it's called like a consistency bias. I forgot who said it. I believe it's Robert Cialdini. I forgot what book I think Influence is the book. And he talks about the consistency bias where people want to appear consistent. So if they tell you all these things and you write them down and you bring them up at the end of the call, and then you question them on their decision-making processes based on what they're telling you within the call, they have no choice but then to stick with the original thing that they said because of the consistency bias. They want to be perceived as consistent. So anyway, we'll talk more about that at the end as well. So, how much would you have to be bringing in to be able to walk in the door and put in those 2 weeks? So this is like that end all be all number. Like, what do you need to make every single month to go into your boss and be like, yo, here's my 2 weeks. See you later, right? Because we're trying to build that scenario in their head and get them to think about, oh, well, like I would need this amount of money. And then overall, what's your long-term vision for quitting your job? What is your long-term vision for your dating life? What is your long-term vision of blah, blah, blah? And then they're going to give you that and you need to probe into again. So honestly, probing questions, it needs to come after every single question. I didn't put it on here, but it really does need to come after every question, right? What is your monetary goal? And there's probing questions. And then you can see here, there's probing questions here. Overall, what is your long-term vision? Probing questions. Let's say, what is your long-term vision for your dating life? And they say, oh, well, I wanna be able to find a wife. Okay, gotcha. What is that like? What does that person look like for you specifically? Oh, they're this body type, this personality, whatever. Okay, gotcha. Why is that important to you? And you can see there's different probing questions that you can go through. So then after that, you go through all the probing. And it's like, okay, so now can I ask you a personal question? And they say, yeah. And I'd say, okay, well, the reason why I'm asking is because my goal isn't to, and then in this part here, you would just replace this with their situation that they're trying to get to. So I'll just go through this. It's only to, and the reason why I'm asking is because my goal isn't only to help you build a business that's building you wealth, but also, one that's empowering you to live whatever lifestyle that you really want to live. So when you think about that, right? When you think about that ultimate lifestyle, what is that for you? Like, what comes up? What are like the non-monetary goals, like the personal goals that you want for your business to allow you to achieve that? So you really got to like build this out based on, again, your specific offer. But, if it's dating, I would say like, I'm going to try to build this out. So the reason why I'm asking is because my goal isn't to help you get on more dates, but my goal for you is really just to fully understand, like, what are your long-term and personal goals in finding more dates and getting married so that we can like fully help you achieve that, right? And I was kind of building that on the fly. So really, as you're going through this, the biggest thing to understand is you're trying to set up asking non-monetary goals and their personal goals. That's the reason that you're setting this up in the way that you are, so that you can get away from like just money, right? And just building the business into how is that going to make them a better person inside? Because that inside in their heart and soul, the answers to those questions are going to be what really help them over the edge to help them understand, that they can actually achieve those goals. So we went over desired situation. Now let's cover current situation. So current situation. Now, what do you do now for work full time? So again, keep in mind, this is for someone that is, and remember, this might seem super redundant, right? Because like, now what do you do what do you do now for work full time? You wouldn't ask this question if you had the conversation up here about what they're currently doing. So I would just, and you can see here, there's a lot of redundancy here. So, I'll just go over this, but you can see, but sometimes this is why it's important to understand that like a framework is important, but you don't want to have a specific script, because if you're in a script and if you were to look at this next part and you're like, wait, hold on, like I already asked all these things, what's going on? As long as you're writing down your notes, you can glance over to this and you would understand that you already have the answers to these first handful of things. So with your current situation, I'm just going to go through it so you can kind of understand, you'll get the tonality. So I would say, now, what do you do for work for full time right now? Or if you already knew that, you'd be like, okay, so John, and you told me that you're currently working corporate. And then, right here, they said, they already told us they didn't like it. So I could dive more into that and say, what's the like, why don't you, like, remind me, like, why don't you like that? Let's just, I want to focus on that a little bit more. Why don't you like the job? And then more probing questions, right? What's the worst part about that job? Taking me back to the day where you said enough is enough, what happened? So if we're using this business growth example, is you're trying to get them to the position and admit to you really the breaking point within their situation, right? So what we're trying to paint, for example, if let's say it's a weight loss thing, right? And there's this story that Cole, it rings in the back of my head, but he talked about, you want to ask them, take me back to the part where you realize that you knew that you needed to lose 30 pounds, or you knew you wanted to lose weight. And, the prospect tells a story of like, I was playing with my daughter and she jumped up into my lap and she said, mommy, you feel squishy. So that moment in that person's head, right, in their head, is the breaking point where they said, enough is enough. I need to make something happen. So the important part of this, right, what's the worst part about that, right? What's the worst part about your current situation of wanting to lose more weight? What's the worst part about not being able to get enough dates, right? Take me back to the day where you said, enough is enough. And they'll tell you those anecdotes and those stories, because when they can tell you those stories, that's what's going to bring them back to the position where they decided to make that decision, that enough is enough. And then it elicits the emotions that come with it, right? So you need to, this is a part that I would really, really dive into. Keep in mind, sometimes these conversations aren't like quote unquote easy to have, but when you can fully understand that you asking these questions could literally change this person's life, because they probably have never had people like actually break this down with them before. And it's like literally sales, especially in specific industries, it turns into like therapy sessions almost, and you just like get them to talk, right? How long have you been doing it, right? So you're trying to figure out and build doubt, right? When we're talking about the 7 beliefs, how long have you been doing it, and how long have you been thinking about starting this business, or how long you've been working out, and how long have you been wanting to lose weight, right? How long you've been doing it and thinking about starting this business? And then can I ask you a personal question after all that time? What was the final straw? Like, what made you draw the line in the sand and say, you know what, this has got to become a priority right now? So really, kind of the same thing that's up here, right? But what we're trying to do is, again, build the doubt of, number one, they've already tried it in the past, they can't do it, and also cost, right? What is the cost of not doing it? Because if they tell us, I've tried this multiple times, my daughter told me I was squishy, right? All those things, is at the end of the call, remember, consistency bias, is we can build that, hey, like, Nancy or whatever, Susan, you told me that, the main reason why you wanted to start losing weight is so that you can make sure that you don't, come down with some sort of sickness and you're able to spend, your life with your daughter, right? So you told me that, but now you're telling me like this isn't a priority and you don't want to move forward. Like, help me understand where the disconnect is there, right? Your brain is, as opposed to saying, what do you need to think about? Or like, you can't afford not to do this, right? Like, that's what usual salespeople will say. So little shots at hardcore salespeople. Okay, so we've gone through that. They do like it. So this would be the two options, right? They don't like their situation. You would go through some of those questions. If they do like their situation, and then you would just say, so, what do you like about it, right? What do you like about your current situation? And how long have you been doing that? That's how long you've been working in corporate. How long have you thought about starting this new business? Because here's the thing, if they're comfortable and they're in the spot where, they're okay and they like their job, is we got to figure out, okay, cool, but like, why are they on this call then? Why are they looking for a change? So what do they like about it? Tell me more about that. How long have you been doing that for? How long have you, thought about starting this business? And then there were more around like the desire of why they want to start the business versus getting out of their job, because that's not a pain point for them. So I'd say, well, can I ask you a personal question? After doing that for 5 years and, it's going fairly well for you, I mean, why all of a sudden do you want to start doing that or stop doing that and do this business? So you can hear the tonality is I'm coming from a place of genuine curiosity, not a canned script, right? Like a salesperson, like a hardcore salesperson, we'll call them. They'd say, why all of a sudden do you want to start this business? Why do you want to do that today? Right? That's usually what they would say. As opposed to, you can see here, it's like, well, so, John, can I ask you like a personal question? And the reason we say that is when we ask, can I ask you a personal question? It's preemptively saying, can you, like, I'm basically expecting a personal answer, right? So it's like, well, John, can I ask you a personal question? They say, yeah. after doing that for, 5 years at this point, like it sounds like it's going pretty well for you. Why, like, I'm just curious, why all of a sudden do you want to stop doing that and start a business instead? Like, what happened? What happened to make this a priority for you now, though? And that's where they start to bring in, okay, this is what happened. This was why I want to do this. And then you just probe into that a lot more. So we're jumping down doubt. The question would be, what do you think has been the biggest thing in getting this started by yourself? Or what do you think is the biggest challenge in getting this started by yourself? Probably a better way to put it. And what's in the way? So that's kind of, it depends on how you want to say it, right? So this almost like preemptively says, what's in the way. So like, what's the challenge? So remember, the last video we talked about doubt, and this is the special one to where we have an interesting situation, and this question will usually answer both of these. So with doubt, we need to be, if we're looking at two sides, right? We have a current situation, desired situation, and then the middle section, right? In one, between the current situation and the buying pocket is them understanding that whatever the thing is can actually be solved, right? The thing actually works. And then in the other, between buying pocket and desired situation, in between that is them understanding that they can't do it themselves. So what we're trying to do is build doubt in that it does actually work, right? Get over the doubt that it actually works, and then also over the doubt that they can do it themselves. So that's the idea here. So with this question is you're asking, what's the biggest thing in getting this started yourself? So they might say, well, I actually did try this myself, or I've tried this myself multiple times. I say, okay, gotcha. Like, what have you tried? What have you tried to get more dates? What have you tried to do this? What have you tried to blah, blah, blah? So what I'm listening for are different things that they're saying to then, quote unquote, use against them at the end of the call, right? Because if they say, well, I'm just going to go try this myself. Well, John, you told me a couple of seconds ago, like, you tried this yourself. You tried this yourself for the last 5 years. So I guess I'm just curious, like, if you've already tried it in the past 5 years and you've tried to do it yourself and you've used all these different methods, like, what's going to be different this time, right? So that's kind of the idea with this question here. So again, probing questions on every single one of these questions. And then we have solution questions. So, have you reached out to anyone else to get help with this in the past? Are you working with anyone right now? Have you been out there considering other coaches to possibly help with? Have you done coaching before? So the solution is we're trying to figure out what they've already done in the past to try to get to their solution. And the reason we're asking this kind of plays into doubt as well, but it's like, have you reached out to anyone else to get help in the past? If they say yes, we'd say, okay, and we'd probe into that. Okay, so who have you helped in the past? So then again, you would ask more questions based on what they say there. Are you working with anyone now, right? So this is another big one because they might already be working with another coach. And, and then right here too, it goes into this one. Have you done coaching before? I guess this is all kind of like the same question, just kind of answering it a little bit differently. But it's like, are you working with someone now? And if they say yes, it's like, you got to figure out, okay, why is it not working with them? What's going on? One thing that you can figure out here, what type of prospect this is, right? So if they're saying like, I'm working with someone right now, and let's say they're trying to build their business, I'd say, okay, like, I'm just curious, like, why, like, if you're working with the other person now, why, like, be on this call with me? And they might say, well, I'm not seeing results. And I would say, okay, gotcha. So like, why don't you feel like you're seeing results? And they'd say, well, they told me to do blah, blah. And what I'm trying to figure out here is, again, what type of prospect they are. Because if there's someone if they say something like, and I start to get a little bit skeptical, if they say I'm working with someone else and it's just not working, if they say anything about like their method or like specifically like their thing doesn't work, and then I probe into that and ask them, what is that specific method? And I know just from knowing my competitors and knowing what actually works within the space, if they tell me something like, oh, this isn't working, I can probably nail it down to like, it's not the process isn't working. It's just like that person is not doing what they need to do in order to take action, or in order to see results, which is taking action. So the last thing that I want to do is enroll a client that isn't going to take any action, So anyway, just keep that in mind as well. So then, have you done coaching before? All this pretty much asks the same questions and getting to the same outcome. And then you're going to ask support questions. So, are you married? And, this support would be, if they're specifically married, do they have a partner, business partner? So you can say, so John, I'm just, are you married? You got kids? Or you can say, so John, like, do you, just so I make sure that I'm on the same page here, like, do you have a business partner, any other decision makers? Are you married? Anything like that? And then would say, what would your wife, husband, partner, business partner, what would they say about this transition? Are they supportive in you Because they're supportive of your dating life. Probably not the best question to ask a married person, but is your wife, is your husband, your partner, what do they think about you, trying to generate more leads for the business? Are they supportive in that? And if they'll say yes and they say no, it'd be like, if they say yes, it's like, okay, gotcha. Like what have you guys talked about? Oh, we talked about blah, blah, blah. Or if they say no, it's like, well, okay, so why wouldn't they be supportive in you losing 20 pounds? Why wouldn't they be supportive in you growing a business? Why wouldn't they be? So the reason we want to ask why they wouldn't be supportive is because that is going to come up as an objection later on in the call if we don't figure out why they aren't supportive, right? Because they're just going to come up with like, I need to talk to my wife, because that's going to be a objection. Do they know? And then do they know that you're on this call, right? That could be another thing. Like, do they know that you're on this call with me right now to help you do this? Like, what would they think? What would they think if they did know that you were on this call? And then just really diving into figuring out what their relationship is with their partner, with their spouse, with their business partner. And then overall, like based on their answers, you can dive a little bit more into it. What I'm usually looking for here is like, are they supportive? Are they on the same page? And would they be supportive and like be excited that they're on the call? If it's anything other than that, I'm diving into it and figuring out what is the actual problem there. Okay, so now we've made it into the transition. So as a refresher of where we are in the conversation is we already did the introduction, we went through all the information gathering, and now we are in this transition, which is the super basic transition right in here. And then we're gonna talk about the pitch and the committing phase. So this is gonna be the easiest language to transition from discovery into this transition into the actual pitch itself. So this is what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, look, I don't feel like and you want to do this more of like when you're positioning it, is you're almost like thinking like, do I have any more questions? Do I not? So it's like, look, man, I don't feel like I have any more questions. Is there anything else that you feel like we haven't covered that I need to know to help you out best? And they'd say, yes, no. If they say yes, it's like, here's this. Okay, cool. Noting that down. Say, well, John, based on what you told me previously, I definitely think we can help. And you want to emphasize that, right? We can definitely help you. And then you can insert thoughts, right? You can say, the reason that I think we can help is X, Y, and Z. I wouldn't try to dig too deep into it because we want to spend the majority of the time on like the pitch and helping them understand and building the trust of like, we're demonstrating that we know your situation, we know where your problems are, we know where you're trying to go. Our thing is going to be the solution to that problem. So, you can insert some thoughts. All that being said, where do you think we should go from here? And this is a really important phrase, right? You can say, where do you think we could go from here? I can walk you through the entire process of A to Z of how we can help you get to outcomes. So help you get to $20,000 a month, help you get to more dates, help you get to the point where you're enjoying your marriage more, right? Help you get to whatever, if you'd like. But, you tell me where you want to go from here. So what we're doing and why this is so important is this needs to be in here. This might seem really small, but it needs to be in the script, because if you don't do this, what's happening is one of two things are happening. Really one main thing's gonna happen is if you don't ask this question of where do you want to go from here, there is no transition, right? So it just seems like this really big, long conversation, and you want them to ask you for your help, right? So you want them to physically say, hey, where do you want to go from here? They have to physically say, how do you do it? How can you help me? Right? And then now they're asking as opposed to you pushing this thing on them, right? The saying goes, people love to buy, but they hate to be sold to. So when you ask this question, it helps you a lot. So, tell me, where do you want to go from here? And they'll say, okay, how can you help me? And then you want to give some thoughts. So the couple things that you can do here, you can give a case study story, right? You can do a personal story. You can just give some basic valuable insight on the what, not the how. So the biggest thing that I like to do, and this would be if you're a closer, you'll want to like get different case studies of other people that have gone through the program that have seen success right through the thing that you're selling, because you can like introduce that as the like in the transition. So I'd say, okay, so before John, I give you like the exact step-by-step plan. I think your situation is really similar to a guy that we started working with about 3 months ago. He was in the same situation. He's a full-time, and you can just tell like a personal story or a case study, right? So it's like he was also a dad. Not really a ton of time on his hands to get to the gym, but just through like 1 or 2 different changes of like how we were positioning his workouts, how, you know, we changed up his diet a little bit. It not only gave him the opportunity to spend more time with his family and not feel as if he was like deprived from things that he loved because of, you know, having to eat healthy and work out, but he's actually now able to live a much more fulfilling life because he feels confident in his skin. He's been able to lose pounds, and now he feels more attractive to his spouse, and they're able to, you know, XYZ, whatever the end result is. So make sure that it is an actual case study. You don't want to like make up a story and try to like fit all of like their specific things into like a story. Just find someone that you feel like, just think about someone that's kind of similar to their situation. Tell their story as if like you're almost like painting them the picture of that could be their potential situation as well. And then you transition. So here's the pitch. So the pitch, here's the way they want to think about it as well, is the pitch is, yes, it's you telling them what you can do for them, but it's also simultaneously you like educating them. Now, this is the reason it works so well, is because you're breaking down like, here's exactly what we're going to do. And at the same time, it's positioning your thing as exactly what's going to help them get to their end result. Keep in mind, everything that I'm going to go over here, right? The bridge, the pitch codex, sales process redesign. These are like the couple steps that you would go through. This is going to be very specific to like building out a sales process. You would have to get with, like, if you're a remote closer or if you're the owner of an offer, you do have to get with the person that you're selling with and talk about the offer and how you can create this for your specific process. But you can take a lot of the same things that we're talking about and then position it into your own thing. So I'm just going to go through this so that you can kind of see how it's done. So the high level promise. So you would say, gotcha. So, you know, John, do you still have that pen and pad? He'd say, yeah. I'd say, okay, great. So on the pen and paper, what I want you to do is write out 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Leave space in between, but just do 1, 2, 3, 4. The reason you're doing this is you don't want this to be what most salespeople do, and they just talk for the next 5 minutes, and they're like, this is what we're gonna do, here's how we can help, here's blah, 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 blah. It's like, it doesn't become collaboration. So what's happening is now you can physically get them, you know, okay, I'm gonna write out 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see them doing that. If they don't do that, you can call them out on it and be like, yo, like, I'm gonna give you everything that you need right here. And then what else is gonna happen is they have those written out, they can write them out. Where's that paper gonna go? Probably gonna be right there on their desk. So what it does is it allows you to stay top of mind, and it's always gonna be there just staring at their face. And, you know, now they just can't forget you, right? You're the guy that is actually trying to help them out and create a process for them. So great, you know, it's great on a paper, write out 1 to 4, and you could be 1 to 3, depending on how many pillars you have. Again, wait for them to acknowledge that they've done this. Okay. Let me just go ahead and preface by saying that everything we do with our business is completely customized on what's best for the client, right? What's best for you. So for you specifically, it's going to be these 4 things, 4 steps that you can go from, and then you would insert current situation to desired situation. So 4 steps you can go from not feeling fulfilled in your life and being able to build a business that actually makes a difference in the world, right? But you would take things that they told you in current situation and things that they told you in desired situation, back to consistency bias. You're putting it back in front of them. Not only does it show you that you were listening, but it shows them that you fully understand their situation, and it's going to actually help them. So example, 0 controlling your sales calls to closing at least 30,000 or more of the people you speak with in the next 8 weeks. So basically with that, you would put in the information based on what they're looking for. So they say, cool. And then here's the bridge. So the bridge is just 1 sentence. So cool. So when you come in, the very first thing we're going to do is build out what I call and you want to give each of these things a name. So I'm not going to, maybe I'll do a different video around how to build out a pitch, but this is assuming that the company that you're working with or remote closing for already has an offer. So if they have an offer and they don't have it broken out in pillars, maybe you can even get, like, this is what makes you super valuable as a closer, is if you're watching these videos, you can consult the business owners on how they can sell better. And then when you break this down, it makes it so much more clear when the prospect is writing these out, and then also more confident when you're presenting it. So the bridge is you're saying, okay, so when you come in, when you work with us, the very first thing we're going to do is build out what is called your pitch codex, what is called your date in a day process. I don't know. You come up with different fancy names. It's called a unique mechanism. So first thing we're going to do is get clear on your offer and how it's explained over the phone. And we're gonna do that in a way in which it'll feel in the same way that's compelling, that's new and very different to what the prospect has heard before, which will not only allow you to separate yourself from the competition, but also because of the positioning, likely increase your pricing, which means less work to get to your goal and more time in the evenings with your family. Does that make sense? So a couple things I'm gonna break down here. Again, you're gonna have to build this out for your own offer, but you're doing a couple things in here. Every single time that you're giving each of these different pillars, what you're doing is you're taking different things that they told you and you're putting them within this, and then you're also putting their desired situation into this. So for example, so right here, so it will allow you to separate yourself from the competition. So this would be really powerful if they said that one of their main problems is there's a ton of competition, right? So it's like this will allow you to separate yourself from the competition, but also because of the position, it'll likely increase your pricing, which means less work to get your goal and more time in the evenings with your family. So this could be one of their goals. And then you always want to ask, does that make sense? The reason you want to ask, does that make sense, is because you want to have like an actual conversation with them, not just talk to them for 15 minutes. It won't take 15 minutes, but 4 or 5 minutes about the specific pitch. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. Okay, awesome. What questions do you have on that? If they don't have any questions, okay, cool. Once your pitch is dialed in, the next thing we'll focus on is, you go to the next thing. Next thing we'll focus on is your sales process redesign. So I don't think I'll go through this entire thing because this is very specific to like a specific offer, but just understand that everything under these, you can go through this document, copy and paste it, change it based on your specific offer. But it's like what you're doing is you're showing them what this thing is, how it's going to help them, and understanding that it's a simultaneous explanation why everything they've tried in the past hasn't worked and why this is going to be different. So for example, if they told you, again, in those doubt questions or this, doubt and solution questions, if they said like, oh, I've like tried this in the past, I'm doing this, whatever. So right here, so you said, how earlier on the call you mentioned that you're dealing with a bunch of objections, right? So this could be, so how earlier on the call you mentioned that you're dealing, or that you're not able to lose the weight because of blah, blah, blah. Well, the reason that is because this, and that's why we created this. So again, you're creating this process that makes sense for them and it's gonna help them. So you guys can go through this. I mean, this video is gone pretty long at this point. And then pipeline and follow-up systems. So again, very same thing. And then, the last thing here, and then delivery. So that's also the next process. And then here's the committing phase. So committing phase is really important. So the committing phase is basically them understanding after you go through the pitch, them understanding that this is like, they are 10 out of 10, 100% ready to move forward, right? So the committing phase, you're going to say this, just curious. In terms of the process specifically, and the process meaning all the things you talked about in terms of the pitch, how do you feel? How do you feel right now in terms of that process? So certain answer plus certainty tonality equals move on. So if they're like, yeah, I'm 100% confident, or they might not say that, but they'll say, yeah, I'm actually really confident that this is going to be what helps me out. If they say that, you can move on to the next part. If they don't say that, right, and they answer uncertain and they're like, yeah, I mean, it sounds okay, like, whatever. So if they answer in that way, you would say this part, right? So it's say, I hear you. And just to be totally clear here, like what's really important to me on these conversations is alignment. So when you come in and work with us, we're rolling up the sleeves, right? We're getting in the trenches with you on this thing. And I mean, our team is all in. So it's really important that you feel good about this process. You know what I mean? So then you jump in. So just to be 100% clear here, like on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being like, I'm over the moon excited, like this is exactly what I need. Or I'm sorry, 1 is like, I hate this guy, get off the phone right now. 10 being like, yes, let's do it right now. Like I 100% want to make this go, like get this moving. Where do you feel like you fall exactly? So again, here, if 9 out of 10, if they say 9 out of 10, plus that certain language, they're like, yes, I'm 100% in, let's do it. You move on. If it's 8 or below, you got to ask the following. So, gotcha, man, gotcha, Susan, I appreciate you being honest here. I'm just curious, like what exactly do you think is keeping you from saying, and being like an 8, a 9, or a 10, right? And this is the beauty of this, right? This is the beauty of asking this 1 to 10 question is now what's happening is you are getting the objections out before you drop the price, right? We haven't dropped the price yet, which is good because the opposite thing usually happens is the salesperson will talk for 10 minutes and then they'll say, oh, here's our thing and it's $5,000. but you don't understand or you don't know if they had any objections with that entire process. So when we ask this, is we're getting all the objections out by asking that, you know, what's holding you back from being, you know, 8, 9, or 10? And they're going to give you the objections. Well, I don't know how this process works. Well, I've tried this in the past and it didn't work. Well, I did this, this, and this. And then you would handle those objections specifically. We'll talk about objections in one of the next videos. So again, very, very important is you got to, and here's where this like listening and like being present with a prospect comes into play, because you don't want to like be super redundant here. If they're like already super excited, like, yes, 100%, I want to move forward, you don't necessarily have to go through this whole thing here, right? You can just say, you know, just curious, but in terms of, you know, process specifically, how do you feel? And they'll say, you know, I'm really confident. I would skip this and say, okay, so just to be 100% clear here, like on a scale from 1 to 10, you don't have to like realign that belief, if that makes sense. So then you do that, then handle the objection, ask for clarifying questions, and then retemp, are you sure? So what you're going to do is you handle that objection, whatever it is, ask the clarifying question. So, you know, does that make sense? Like, does that answer the question? They'd say yes. And I'd say, okay, gotcha. So like, now are we on a scale, or now where are we on a scale from 1 to 10? Oh, I'm at an 8. And then you get to a point where you can move on. So transition language. So if necessary, you know, gotcha. So you feel good? Any questions? What's next? Like, where do you feel like you want to go from here? Right? So this would be, again, that asking the question, right? Moving forward. Then we move to onboarding. So onboarding is you're painting the picture of what it's going to be like to move forward and move on with them, right? So, you know, so what we're going to do, next steps here, just so you understand, is since you're 100% certain, like, you know, we're going to process the investment with me. We're going to do that on the call. Once we take care of that, what we're going to do is just set a baseline. So I'm going to give you some homework right away, see where we can get our quickest wins, as well as just have you send your current sales script, your pitch as well, you know, call for review for feedback. Most people find that they end up closing at least an additional deal or two a week just from the first call review breakdown. Then from there, we're ready to rock and roll. That sound good? So again, this section right here, right, you would change this based on whatever you're selling. So keep that in mind there, and then you're ready to go, ready to rock and roll. Does that sound good? So if they all sound good there, and they're like, yes, let's do it. And keep in mind, like the thing here is, you know, a lot of people will say, well, what if like there's objections, or what if they like, you know, whatever. But as long as you follow this process, and as long as you get the 10 out of 10, as long as like everything is good there, they shouldn't be squirmish by the time they get to this, right? Anytime they might get here and you say this of like, you know, so we'll process the investment with B. Once we take care of that, we'll move the baseline. If they get started to get like a little bit nervous, it's a good sign that you messed up somewhere within the process. So, you know, the process investment, whatever, and then you go through that. Now, here's where we do the investment. So, and so does it sound good? Yes? Okay, perfect. So the investment to get high level outcomes, so the investment to help you start to lose those 30 pounds is just X amount, right? So an example here, and the investment to get you to $20,000 a month, so that's $240,000 a year, is just $6,800. And then you shut up, right? You shut up, keep it there, and you're gonna handle objections after that. We've gone really long for this video, so we don't have time to do the objections, but what I can help you guys do now, just give you a high-level overview. Next up in the series is we're going to go over how to land your first closing and appointment setting role. So how do you use all this information, and then know how to go find a role. Also, we'll do objection handling jiu-jitsu. We'll go over the advanced sales techniques, and we'll also how to ascend even past the remote closer right now. So first link down in the description below, or if you're on this document, this button right here. If you don't want to wait for the rest of this stuff, this remote closing masterclass is going to run you through a pretty good amount of information of how you can get started like right now, as opposed to waiting for the next couple weeks for the rest of these videos to come out. I've seen a ton of people come through this series and they realize, hey, I don't want to wait for this free stuff. I understand the value of working closely with someone like you to basically skip the line and see success now rather than later and having to wait for the series. So first link down in the description, as well as the button right here. You guys can check that out right now. So thanks so much for hanging out. If you have any questions, let me know. See you at the next one. Talk soon. Peace.